saying all the issues, right, which was happening at his environment. I was surprised none of you pick what he was saying just to answer this question. I was just surprised. These were normal issues which actually happened in work. You can just say that, oh, I did, like I was doing a backup, not knowing I wasn't supposed to back up that particular database. Then how did you resolve it? Right? You will not resolve it automatically. You need to let your manager, as I said, I twisted the question again. Inform your manager that this is the issue you have done or the problem that you have caused. Because mind you, a lot of DBAs have lost their job simply because they did not report a case. And later on, they found out, but these are technologies, and you get fired. Right. So these are simple things, we can put it in our head. It's for all of us, you know, being at a job, getting into the job, we all learn all these things. Because simple thing, not being honest. Because most of your introduction, you guys were all saying that you are trustworthy, reliable person. So just on the job environment, just try to one, document everything. Just tell the truth. If an incident, they will not fire you for you to saying the truth, right? But if you don't say it and something bad happened, that's where you will get yourself into it. Then now to what I actually observe. Karen, you did amazing. You are getting there, but I could hear that you were typing, right? When I asked some of the questions, I could boldly. And these are, as soon as I'm doing the interview, I would just stop because you don't know what you are saying. You are just typing. So you could see that when I ask some of the questions and you are giving the answers, I will just move because you are typing to give me the answer. So find a way to work on that. As my brothers have said, we all need to work. When it comes to Christina, you started, I know you were a little bit nervous, but I like the spirit that you brought it back after overcoming. We all have been there, right? You will get there, just keep on studying. I Reverend can testify. Like when you speak, you sound like one of our colleagues called Adele, But as I said, try just be consistent, put in the application, and I definitely know from one interview, that's it. You will improve, improve, then And
Thank you, sir.
yeah, lastly will be patience. Yeah, she is like more patience enough. So patience, I fully, understand. Um, but as my brother added it down there, that 2 years will not help you. I don't know about Europe, but you are in the market for a lot of people. And also, don't, because what I was assuming, or based on the questions that the questions thrown in and how you answer them, you just wanted to sound like you are a junior DBA. And that shouldn't be an option. Like, that shouldn't be the plan. Don't limit yourself. Never limit yourself. Because if not, you will not get there. Right. So if you can put more, practice, more, because you guys have everything, more of the work. And also one thing that I forgot. Yeah. So back to you, Karen. You did mention of 20, fine, you took us back to 2018, 28, right? And 2019. And you told us that you did an upgrade, right? In place upgrade. So doing an upgrade, you don't move data. I'm asking you a simple question. I don't know whether you use Android or iPhone. When you do an upgrade, when you upgrade your software, do you move any settings, anything, anywhere? So that's exactly the same thing, right? On an upgrade, we don't move any data. It's just a software that we are changing, right? We are. But when it comes to side by side, that's where a data would definitely be moved. And also, please don't give that gap. 28 and 2019, you are killing yourself because they will come in with a lot of questions. I think that was where Mr. Emmanuel wanted to, hit you with that because that's a very big gap
Mm-hmm.
and you put yourself into trouble. So please, if you can, fine, on your resume it is there, but maybe on your current project that you are doing, you can be like, oh, I'm on 2014, upgrading to 2019, or 2016, upgrading to 2019 or 2022. At least that's because right now, if somebody asks you a question, how will you migrate or have you done any migration from 28 to now? You give us the steps. You can learn, but don't give them the chance to ask you more questions. Yeah. So
Complicated
that's
questions
just, yeah.
for that
All right.
matter.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you
yeah,
so much, James.
yeah.
Appreciate that.
All right.
Guys, normally the time is up now, but because we started late, I appeal to you to give us about 10 to 15 minutes to answer your questions. Do you have any questions
For
for
sure.
us?
Yeah.
Um,
Anyone.
I've seen there's a question in the chat. I guess they wanted a clarification.
On what? Yeah.
What's the question? Please say it faster.
Hey, please, what backup
All
do
right.
you use?
Give it
Oh,
to me. Mr. Emmanuel asked this
and
question,
install.
okay?
Mhm.
Among the backup, the type of backups you have full,
Yeah.
differential, and transactional, which one you can ignore and why? All right. Okay. Mr. Emmanuel, over to you. If you are speaking, you are muted.
Think maybe. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to
Yeah,
step.
let me.
Okay. Go
Oh,
ahead.
you want
Go
to step
ahead.
in?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I will use my current environment as an example. In my current environment, we have only full backup and transactional, right? We don't do any differential
Differential.
simply because we want to save space. We have always been having space issues, right? And it's all to save money. So as we keep on saying, every company and what they do to suit them. During the interview, when I was getting on board, I was giving them all these steps. Then they were like, okay, so what would you do to save us money? Right?
Mm.
And I was like, okay, because they don't want to like, because differentials is still storage that you are just storing over there, but they don't have that money to cater for those storage. So that's why they have had, we take um daily full backup day, and even with the transactional, it's every hour, right? So, and also we have I would say a retention policy which wipes off those data. So it all depends on how your environment is. So yeah, Reverend, if you have anything to add on your side.
Now we move forward, or well answered. We understand that differential is a subset of the full backup. Okay.
Mhm.
And you started on a right foot, okay, by saying that it takes the uh, just the leftover of the transaction, but you need to understand that is a subset of the full backup, which means it does almost the same. job that's the full backup is doing. All right. So there is that. And also, just as James have mentioned it, okay, to save time, I mean space, because of of the capacity that we have there, we can ignore it. It's not the best strategy, okay, but we can ignore it, and it just work fine if your timing works properly. All right. Any other question?
Um, Mr. Emmanuel asked a question. What is the difference between read only and a secondary replica? And I didn't get the last thing that he said.
I don't want to request one if I didn't look good.
Is somebody talking?
Yeah. Flores, do you want to say something?
Oh yeah. If Emmanuel is not available, I can
Okay,
chip in on the
sure.
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what he was asking you. So the difference is that with read only, especially if it's a big environment, you can use your secondary replica for load balancing, because you can direct some of your users to execute on your secondary replica or nodes, just like, they can only, it's read only, so they can execute some queries. They won't be able to make any changes to the database, but they can still have like access to the information. So that's the difference. And that's why he also talked about load balancing.
Well answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other question?
And still, I was
You don't
surprised.
have questions?
They don't have questions. They will say
It's
they don't have
funny.
questions.
I've asked you question
Yeah.
on security, and I told you that you guys messed up.
They were not, and
And nobody
even with
asked.
database, like I was surprised. Like,
Okay, so how can you give us the answer of that
What was the
question
question, first of all? The answer to all.
concerning how do you secure your environment?
All right. Thank you so much. This is a very important question for a DBA that I am. Securing the environment, it's everything that a DBA cannot escape in his entire life. And security is huge. But I'm going to start with the two main things that we use for security measure. It first of all access, secondly encryption. Now talking about access, that way we create login and user to grant them access based on their need using the principle of least privilege, okay, and revoking any particular access when it's no longer required, okay. That it is, I'm coming to you, that is in the matter of access. And on the other hand, we want to establish also encryption, because we have sensitive information, and in securing the environment, we need to make sure that only the right people have access to the right information at the right time. And imagine if we are having a cybersecurity attack, okay, and people fall on your on your backup files. It will make no sense to them, or a table. It will make no sense to them if it is encrypted. So we encrypt data at rest using TDE, and maybe always encrypted. And we can also apply, data masking. It's not an encryption per se, but it just masks some particular character, or add particular character either in the middle or toward the end. Those are the two main things. But security is huge. It starts all the way from the implementation of SQL Server. Which service account did I choose? And did I attribute the correct, privileges to that particular service account? That's, already securing the environment. Did I partition in my drive? Because I work in an environment, I arrive, the drives were not partitioned. You need to understand that when there's a hacker, the easy go drive is a C drive that people know. So we cannot have all our operating system files in the C drive and all our SQL drive in the same. This is putting your environment at risk. So you partition the drive, you are already securing the environment, okay? Patching regularly. As you're applying patches, you are securing the environment, giving complex passwords, okay? Not password like 12345. No, complex password. It is securing the environment. These are the few things that I can mention. I know there are more, but these are the few things that I can mention about how I go about securing my environment.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any question? Any other question?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you asked a question about if a disaster happened, like we have a flood, like earthquake or something just happened to our company, and everything we just have a flood. Like, what is the first action as a DBA you have to take to restore your data?
Thank you so much. First of all, you need to know that in the process, as you have already established, your backup strategy, okay? Now you have an incident. How do you attack? The first thing is to take the tail log, if you can. Depending on the type of the disaster, you can be able to take a tail log, okay? But in general, when there is fire, flood, there are no data, there is no tail to be taken at that particular moment, okay? But this is the way you can do to recover back to a point in time. So you first of all take the tail log, then you look for your most recent full backup, because the full backup is the mother and the cornerstone and the pillar of all restore. Okay, you cannot start your restore process with your differential or with your transactional log. You look for the most recent. Okay, and then after that, you look, if you have implemented differential, you look for the most recent differential. And a follow-up question will have been, why only the recent? Because for the transactional, you're going to identify all of them. And when you are restoring the full backup, you restore it with no recovery. The differential is also restored with no recovery. What does it mean? It means you're informing SQL Server that, hey, hold on, I'm not yet done. Transactions are still coming. Because if you restore the first full with recovery, that's it. You've lost data. You cannot now restore others because you say, I'm done. The DBA is full. So you restore the full with no recovery, the differential with no recovery. You identify all the transactional log files. You restore them equally with no recovery. And then the last T log that will be restored now with recovery. You have restored back to a point in time. At this question, I saw Karen going, or I have my always on setup. You must really pay attention to the question they're asking you. It's very important. You might be answering, you are saying the truth, but those not attached to the question that they've given you. All right?
Okay.
Any other question?
I just want to
Isabel?
make one comment here, please, if you
Oh, okay.
mind, if you don't
Go ahead,
mind.
please.
Yeah, I think that was patient, or yeah, she was answering the backup question and keep mentioning a differential of 1 hour. I don't know if that was patient or was the other was Christine, one of them.
It's
I
Christian.
just want to make a correction, right? In my whole life, and I believe in every company in the whole wide world, I'll never see a company setting up a differential for 1 hour
Really?
or every 1 hour. It's not practicable. It's not realistic. Right. So if an interviewer asks you a question and you start giving that kind of RPO, it already tells me that you are not experienced, that you don't know what you're talking about, right? There are some things that I mean, if you want to set it on SQL Server, it's gonna be possible, but it's practically not realistic. And so you're gonna try to find out. That's why I always advise you guys to read, because if you read, because when you talk, when you talk, I can see if what you are saying is what you know, is what you've crammed, is what you've seen it somewhere. I can detect that from Elvin, from you talking. Right. So I believe if you go in an interview and talk like that, they won't buy your story. They won't buy your story. Uh, and then
Thank you.
I also just pasted on the team chat. Somebody asked, well, which database can we ignore? I think I gave a very broad answer on the team chat. You can read it. It's very straightforward. Yeah. So that's why I just said, let me just, was just worth mentioning, right? So
Thank you so much. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really, just to come back on that, just imagine every hour there is a differential just like another full backup every hour. Huh. You are rich in memory. You are not here to save us money. You are here to, make us waste money or what? Okay. So yeah. Any other
So what's the
question?
what is
Sorry
the
for
best
that.
practice?
Well, that
What's
question is open. There is no recommend. I cannot. So it's gonna depend on a number of factors. That's why I
What
keep using what it depends on this SLA and the RPO, right? Each company is gonna be different. You can have a company that does a daily differential. A company can do a weekly differential. They can do a monthly differential and even a yearly differential, right? So it's really not something standard, but an hourly differential is a no-no. You can have an hourly log backup. You can have a 30 minutes log backup. You can have a 10 minutes log backup, a 5 minute, and even I've even seen some company going as low as 3 minute log backup. So it's depending on their SLA and RPO. That is very important to always mention when you're answering a backup question because there is no one size fit all shoes here. Your company requirement for that particular, and even in the same company, every database is not the same. There are databases that might need every 3 minutes, and there are databases that you can afford for an hour loss. And there are databases that you can do even like you can ignore the log backup totally, right? You can ignore that one, or you can ignore the lock and the differential and do just the full backup. So you're gonna find that I'm talking about reproduction databases. I mean, because when you start talking about ignore somebody starting maybe this is there for something. There are production databases that they can ignore the lock, you can ignore the differential. You can just do a daily full backup, a weekly full backup, a monthly full. It just depends on that application, right? Just depend on what you want to achieve. Because remember, backing up is not cheap. It's one of the, if not one of the most expensive things that a company does. Because to back up the database is one thing. How long you're going to keep that backup for is another thing. And all of this need drive, and drives are not cheap. Space to save them is not cheap. So if you are hiring you as a DBA to come manage these resources, they don't want you to come and consume all the money and spend it like that. You have to come up with a solution. What is best? That is why when I ask the question, which backup can you comfortably ignore in a recovery process? I mean, that is kind of question that you ask back to the interviewer. What is your requirement? Because it's not every question that you go and answer. There are questions that you give back. I'm expecting her to ask me the requirement. You don't just go and straight ahead and start answering that kind of question in an interview. I wouldn't advise, right? If an interviewer asks that kind of question that has like 1,000 scenario, 1 million scenario, the possibilities. You cannot just answer because you don't know why you asking back. So that you should focus on what or you should focus on what the requirement is, or you should narrow down to his thinking process so that you and him will be talking in a line, right? So when you ask that kind of question, you don't just go ahead and you start answer, or you give a vague answer like the answer I paste in the chat. That is a vague answer because that answer doesn't answer anything, but it gives like a broad scenario that can still be narrowed down. So that's the kind of way you answer that kind of question. You don't just go ahead and start telling all kind of stories. I mean, so that's the kind of way to answer that kind of question is by, like I always said, an interview should be I always try as much as possible. I've been in more than 1,000 interviews. I always try as much as possible to make it a conversation, not an interrogation. So that's what you should take in your mind. Make an interview a conversation and not an interrogation. That one person answer question and the other person answer. You make it in a way that they ask you question, you ask them question back, and you converse. And when you talk like that, you're gonna find it very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, that comes back to my answers to the backup procedure, right? What I told you guys. You don't just start answering. I take full backup. They say, "What's your backup?" So I take full backup. So it becomes like a song said, this one, really, you take full backup on what? Differential on what? How do you know if in our environment? Do you know that, application is, the criticality of that environment and things like that? It's very important. Same questions I've asked two people. I think I don't know, but my question was on the user come to you and cannot have access to users. They cannot have access. You guys just go straight and you answer and say, I'm going to look in the groups and say if he's in any group. If he's not there, I'm gonna add him and whatever. You don't answer like that. Okay. So first of all, you need to establish a root cause analysis. It's very important. Set up a root cause analysis. Okay. Why don't they have access? Is that they don't have access anymore, or they've never had access? They want to take advantage of me. I'm a new TPA and they want to ask me to give them access. Because remember, I had an issue in my company where a user, an analyst, okay, did not have access. It's in the data warehouse. He had access to different data warehouse, not this particular one. Now, because we are granting now access to other people, he came and said, okay, me too, I don't have access to that particular database. Okay. And the mistake I've made, I've started already troubleshooting, looking, and whatever. Maybe they've created, an orphan user, just to realize that he has never even been a user on that one. He does not have, permission to access that one. So there are, first of all, that interaction. I will establish a root cause analysis to find out what happened. What was it? Did it happen just today? Did you have, connections before? And then you're going to check. Maybe sometimes a very simple issue like your configuration manager is off. The agents are off. They are not running. Then you're going to start them. You start the server, and then boom, they have connections back. All right. Sometimes it can be an issue of orphan users that have been created after a migration. All right. And I use the rev log, okay, to script out the login and also to grant, that user permission on the refreshed database, on the new database, okay? And for this particular one, I wanted to come up with follow-up questions to establish that there can be scenarios where a person is not even required to have access. So you must be bold to say, no, you don't have access, you don't need access to this particular database, okay? Unless my manager tells me so, but you don't have any need for this. So you need to, it's not a fight, it's a communication between you and the interviewer. We're about to close. Any other question?
Yeah, I think Isabel wanted to ask a question. Is she still here?
They answered some of the question, but I have, I think, is it Mr. Emmanuel? He asked about what transaction, no, about something about bulk recovery, bulk log recovery, and simple recovery.
I asked, in what scenario will you want to use a bulk log recovery mode? First of all, in the database, a database can either be in one of these three modes. It's either in a full recovery mode, a bulk log recovery mode, or a simple recovery mode. I hope you are aware of that. So
Yeah.
each of these mode will determine how the database is going to behave on in terms of recoverability and what kind of backups can you set up on that database. For example, if you have full recovery mode, which is the one that is most popular or we've been talking about, and this is the only mode that allow for high availability. If your database is not in the full recovery mode, no, you can be in bulk recovery mode and still allow for high availability, but this is the most popular, right? If your database is in full recovery mode, you can have all sort of high availability configured on it. And just to put a cap on it, it's also one of the most expensive mode a database can be, because it's gonna need a lot of storage to store this uh, um, to store the backup files, right? If your database is on bulk lock recovery mode, which was the one I asked, you gonna still have all the capabilities that a full recovery mode has. But the principal difference between a full recovery and a bulk recovery mode is that it pauses the transactions uh, in or the transaction log they are taking. I'll put it, the transaction log, they are done logically instead of physically. I mean, I think that's the best term to define that. What do I mean? Because remember, during a transaction lock, when a transaction lock is taking place, it adds some locks. Remember, I'm talking about lock, a transaction lock, LOG. But the lock now that I'm talking about is LOCK. So when a transaction lock is taking place, it places locks on the database, even though these are minor locks. So it adds some burden to the database. But when you put the database on a full recovery mode, it eliminates those locks. So the process now becomes logical. It means that the database understands that there is a lock taking place, but it doesn't place the lock. So it allows for bulk insert. So bulk recovery mode is mostly done on a database that has bulk, or during bulk insert, or for databases that mostly allow bulk insertion. Bulk insert, like you're inserting a lot of data into that database at the same time, right? So you don't want the transaction log to slow it, because sometimes, like you see, it becomes performance issues, slow running query and all of that. So when you're doing that insert, and remember, insert is also a very high intensive transaction. So you don't want that to be you don't want that to be colliding with the frequent. Maybe you have transaction log every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You have a bulk insert that is going to last for 5 hours, 10 hours. So you don't want those transaction logs to be put in those periodical logs. Remember, I'm talking about two types of logs here. There's a transaction log, LOG, and there's a log, LOCK. So you don't want those transaction logs to be placing those logs on that database. So you want them to be logical. So like it's going to happen in memory. So that's when you introduce bulk lock recovery mode. So you allow transaction lock is still going to take place, but it's not going to place a lock. So the only benefit for bulk lock recovery is for for databases that there's bulk insert taking place. Remember, some companies, they actually have the databases turned into bulk lock during weekends when they are doing mass insert. Like most of the time, they insert a lot of data during weekend and stuff like that. So that's when that happened. And then the other mode, which is the simple recovery mode, this is the cheapest mode a database would be, because this allow only for full backup, right? So if your database is in simple recovery mode, there is no way you can configure any high availability, such as always on replication, lock shipping, or whatever, because it doesn't allow for lock. So all of this always on high availability, remember, there's a difference between always on and high availability. All of these high availability solutions, they work with locks, right? And with simple recovery, lock is not allowed. So that's how I want to explain that.
Thank you so much. Just one thing that I want to add on that is that most of the time it's in your data warehouse, because remember, in your data warehouse, you don't have single insert or the DML operations. You have bulk insert. Okay, and in that case, databases can be placed into bulk recovery mode as well. Any other question? Karen?
Remember, these are
You good?
simple things, simple things like if I ask you what recovery mode a database can be in, you just come and say full, bulk, and simple. And that's not the kind of answer you answer to get a job. Like, what is the recovery mode a database is gonna be? You just come and say bulk recovery, simple recovery, and full. Nobody's gonna give you a job. You have to elaborate. What is the difference? You don't want the interviewer to start saying, okay, define full recovery. No, you just elaborate, possible, give example and personalize the example. Say, in my environment, this happened to me when I had okay, like a very good example of using, I'll give you guys one scenario of using simple recovery mode, right? There is a transact like you always have this issue that comes up, and this happened to almost every DBA, right? You have a scenario where uh the transaction log the transaction sorry the log files of a database are getting full and are not being truncated. Remember, I think I hope you guys understand what a log file is. You know, a database has three types of file. You have the log file, you have the master file, and you have the how you call it again? The LDF. Don't really correct me. It's kind of missing LDF. What does LDF stand for again? You have MDF, LDF, and log. So that's the three files. I'm kind of missing what they stand for right now, but I know MDF stands for master data file. All right.
No, 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 that's fine.
No, it's not log data file.
LDF.
Okay, but
LDF and
anyway, we can
MDF.
talk about that so that I should not lose the train of my thoughts right now. So you have these three kind of files in the database. There's most of the time, and the serious performance issue, you got the log files that are growing big and are not being truncated because the log file is supposed to be truncated every time a transaction complete. So sometimes you have this kind of transactions that will complete and the log file won't truncate. So it's gonna cause an issue. You see a log drive now, the drive that's having your log file is gonna be growing out of space, and then they will start calling you start receiving emails and stuff like that. It's a very big performance issue that you face as a DB, and you can also use as an interview scenario. How do you resolve this kind of issue? Well, there are several ways. The easy way is to truncate. You can just go on the log file, right click, truncate, or you write a script to truncate. But then, what if this easy way doesn't work? Most of the time it doesn't, right? You try to truncate and it does not. And just before I go forward, there's one thing that I want to mention about truncating the log file too. Once you try to, sometimes when you try to truncate the log files, especially with SQL versions from 2016 and below. And this is where your experience, when you say you've worked with different versions of SQL Server, this is another scenario you can use. Especially 2016 and below, most of the time when you try to truncate, what happens is the truncation, if it works, that's good. But if it fails, it reconfigures your log files, which is a bad thing. This has happened to me many times. All right. So when it fails, it actually reconfigures your log files. And now the initial file of your log now becomes that number that is there. So it will never get truncated. So you have to do more to truncate it. But if it works, that's fine. But then the best way, or one of the ways to do it, is to change the database into simple recovery mode, and then you truncate it, and then change it back to full recovery mode, and then you run the transaction log. It's gonna release the space. That is a high level. If you want to do that, it needs a lot of team collaboration because you have to work with the different teams, because changing the mode is gonna temporarily put the database offline, which might mean killing off some transactions that are already running and stuff like that. So this This is a practical troubleshooting scenario that you work together with your team, right, to realize this. All right. So I just feel like I should chip in that little bit of something for anybody that it might benefit. Those are real when they say practical example of stuff that you might have done. When you come up with this kind of scenario, it really proves that you've actually worked.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. This is very important. Can I ask you for all of you have been interviewed today, who has written down what Emmanuel just said now?
I have.
You
I
have?
have.
Okay, that's good. This question keep on, uh, coming back and coming back and coming back in different, interviews. And people keep on, even here at KiawiTech, you will see on Saturday, they'll ask this question. People won't be able to reproduce what just Emmanuel have just said right now. Yet you want to apply and to get, a job. So this is very important. Guys, it's 10:34. Is there any other question? I love this session because we have taken time to answer. I remember last time somebody complained that, uh, you ask questions, you say you will answer us at the end, but actually there's no time to answer us. So you guys are satisfied, right?
Yes,
With
sir.
us? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We appreciate. Kristen, have you started applying?
Not yet.
Is your resume up and working?